Hi, Becca.
Hi.
Podos, is that correct?
Yeah,
Podos? Okay.
yeah.
I want to make sure I don't like to butcher people's names.
That's very
Um,
considerate.
we're talking about your novel, Marvel What If Kitty Pryde Stole the Phoenix Force.
Hmm.
Um, I can tell you, full disclosure, I'm still 40 pages from the end, so you're in no danger of spoilers.
Okay. You're in a
But
really upbeat part of the book.
yeah, things are going really well. There was a crack. Uh, now, right off the bat, I'm reading the book, and the question I keep asking myself is, why isn't this a graphic novel? Why isn't this a graphic
Hmm.
novel? And the way you paint scenes with not just how many people are there and what they look like, but how they smell, like the level of detail is stunning. Was it ever considered to be a graphic novel, or was it always meant to be a novel?
I mean, look, if someone wants to make, presume Marvel wants to make a graphic novelization of the What If series, that's fantastic. But no, so the cool thing is that I got to jump into a running series that some really awesome authors have worked on before me. And so it was always conceptualized as an adult prose novel series to my knowledge. But I've gotten the question before about like the graphic novel versus prose novel medium and the differences and the strengths. And I think so much is accomplishable with both, just in different ways. Like I feel like my favorite graphic novels and my favorite illustrators have such tangible backgrounds, like you can just see and smell and feel the scene that you're in. And so I tried to bring that to the page, and so I'm glad that it worked out.
Excellent. Now, tell me about your personal experience with Kitty Pryde as a character. Were you a fan of her appearances in novels, films? What's your background with her?
Yeah, so I was more like a casual X-Men fan growing up. I think I watched like probably when I was a little kid, I watched like X-Men the animated series and X-Men Evolution when I was a teenager, and the like live action X-Men movies were coming out. But when I got to college, I had a really close friend on the dorm floor who would go to the in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the local comic shop every. I started going along, and X-Men was like the team that I was drawn to start picking up comics, despite our very limited college age funds. And there was just so many iconic X-Men runs going on at that time. Like you had Civil War going on, and House of M, Phoenix Endsong, and Astonishing X-Men was a big one. And Kitty Pryde was really prominent in Astonishing X-Men. And so I was really into the team, but also Kitty's always been one of my favorite characters. She's Jewish. I'm Jewish. She's now canonically queer, which is, fantastic. But I just think the concept of this character who, as the little sister of the X-Men, had her like was literally scooped up the day her powers manifested and had her kind of adult identity formed around and by this found family, as opposed to them enacting on her life after she'd already discovered her powers and things like that. It's just such a really cool character concept watching this girl grow up over the course of the comics. And so I was so excited to get to write Kitty Pryde and to get to since we're doing a non-canonical and timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly adventure, get to kind of explore like without these core tenets of her canon storyline, but still with the core tenets of her character, hopefully shining through. I was just really, really excited to explore that for Kitty in particular.
Yeah, she's certainly a reluctant hero throughout the book. Like she has a strong moral center, but she's very much a loner. She's very much reactionary to
Hmm.
the world around her, which I think a lot of people can relate to in this post-pandemic world we're living in, where we sort of react to the world around us rather than let our core principles guide us.
And
Um,
without that, like who is she when you remove that community that was so central to her character? I think a lot of us would be Kitty Pryde in this novel.
yeah. Um, Now when you talk about all the timey-wimey stuff, this is a multiversal cluster F. Uh, what sort of mentorship did you get from the Marvel team in terms of threading this story and keeping all of these threads together?
Oh boy. Yeah. So when I uh set out to write a time travel story, I might be one of the least suited people to tell a time travel story, just in terms of like wrapping my head around, well, if you move this piece, how does this not change? And so I got to work really closely with, I had two really fantastic editors on the Random House side and the Marvel side in particular. A lot of really great folks worked on this book. But my editor, Gabby, at uh, Random House, and Sarah at Marvel, Gabby spent a lot of time on the phone with me talking through how does this, what is our unified theory of travel and everything like that. But also the Marvel team was so fantastic in terms of if I did a lot of like deep divey research, probably an unnecessary amount of reading comics across decades, but they were there with a question if I had one. They were fantastic folks to work with, no question too small. And then I was also really lucky because I have a good friend, Books, who the novel is dedicated to, who has just an encyclopedic knowledge of the Marvel universe and the X-Men universe. So again, if I had any like stray thought or question, they were just in it with the answer. So as much like love of this series and of Marvel in general that I aimed to bring to the book, there were a lot of really people who were there with just this incredible knowledge base and willing to talk through it with me. So it was fantastic to work with them.
Let's talk about the X-Men team that you've assembled because they have such a huge roster. There's so many people you can choose to put in the book. I every character that you chose really does fit in this story, but were there any that you wanted to use that you weren't able to?
Oh, I mean, I have favorites um, from the X-Men universe that I would have loved to incorporate, but it just didn't work out with where they would have been on the team at that time. I'm really glad that I figured out sort of how to wedge Emma Frost in there because Emma Frost is like one of my forever favorites and just so fascinating. So she gets to play a little role in terms of folks who I would have loved to have in there more. Oh, I don't know. There's so many from like the more modern eras or like iterations of characters that we didn't get to see in this book. One in particular would have been great to like write in scene with the other characters, but is missing for a very specific reason, as you know. So I don't know, but I was also really excited to get to play with the like original, not original, but the early days like core Claremont team that I did not know that much about like Banshee going into this book or anything like that. So it was cool to kind of like get to know them and play on the classic team as well.
Let's talk about the times that you've chosen to set this book in.
Yeah.
They're before your time.
Uh-huh.
So what was the choice of the 1975, 1980, 1990? What was the choice of that time frame?
Yeah, I mean, so the sort of central premise of the novel, which is like very quickly revealed in the book, so it's not really a spoiler, is um Doom leaping into this timeline to essentially like remove Jean Grey from it for his own nefarious specific reasons. And so out of all of the eras to get to sort of like place him back in, it made the most sense to me to come in right before like the Phoenix Saga began, because how are you gonna appear to oppose Jean Grey, even if you're Victor Von Doom post Phoenix? So that was kind of like one of the earliest things that I was solid on. I wasn't sure necessarily where like Kitty Pryde was going to be coming back from in this timeline or what everyone was going to be doing in this altered future, but I was really clear from the start that I wanted to set it just before the Phoenix saga kicked off, which is, obviously iconic for so many reasons and one of my favorites for so many reasons. So that made it a little bit easier to narrow my choice to that. But it was before my time, and it was really cool to get to set it in another time period. And I'll just always remember sitting down and studying those like 70s Claremont era costumes in order to describe them to Kitty Pryde upon meeting them for the first time. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. So it was a really fun time to play it.
Now, the X-Men have no shortage of captivating villains. But as you said, you've chosen Victor Von Doom as your villain in this book, which is very timely as we
Mhm.
have, Doomsday coming out next year. Explain the decision making behind that. Because reading the book and hearing his scheme, Apocalypse could have done this, maybe even Mr.
Mhm.
Sinister. Why Doom?
So Doom, so that was something that I inherited as like the fourth book in this series, and it was revealed at the very end of the previous book, which is Mike Chen's book. Absolutely love Mike Chen, fantastic. That he was sort of the mysterious big bad that had been haunting this series, and I didn't actually know him all that well when I started writing the book. Like his interactions with the X-Men are, there are plenty of them, but it's not his like primary sort of world that he inhabits. So I did a lot of deep diving into Doom, and it just, I think, like makes so much sense for the series and is such an interesting villain to play off of these specific characters that we're following. So he was fascinating to get to know. I read like the books of Doom to get deep into his backstory, and there's just oh my God, so much Doom lore out there, and I'm kind of a fan. If you're gonna pick a villain, like this one makes a lot of sense. It's just such like a rich backstory and such an interesting mentality. So I'm really glad that I got to know him and write him a little bit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of writing the characters, what were advantages or disadvantages of writing characters that people already know so well as elucidating characters that people may not know so well, like
Yeah,
Betsy Braddock or America Chavez?
yeah. There was, I mean, like I'm a fan. Um I want to make fans happy and I want to but there's so many like diverse and diverging opinions on different eras like this America Chavez backstory versus this America Chavez backstory. Like so many eras of Betsy Braddock to like pick and choose from. So when you have this like vast library of comics lore and comics literature to choose from, it was really exciting because you can kind of do anything, especially since the what if books aren't, they don't have to be like canon, Marvel universe. So we had a little bit more liberty and we could play with them a little bit more. But at the same time, if I'm trying to break these characters in this timeline in the most meaningful ways possible, I wanted to know as much about them as I possibly could have. So it was, again, like I keep saying exciting, but I just loved this project so much. And it was cool to do these like long, deep dives into these characters and decades of adventures and lore in order to like narrow down. There's one chapter I got to do that was kind of like a speed run of these iconic characters and their relationship, but I had to pick like 4 or 5 scenes from again decades of lore in which to kind of like establish them. And I'm not gonna lie, a little bit I turned to Reddit, the X-Men forums, and just browsing through and like seeing what moments like fans love the most and really connected with to kind of like help guide me a little bit. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but it
No,
was
I think
really
that's fantastic. You're telling your readers that they helped you write the book, that the book is crowdsourced from Marvel fans.
I mean, I wanted to see like because I have my opinions, I have my little favorite like pet characters and timelines, but yeah, I wanted to see it, and it was so helpful. Like the resources, like stumbling upon an RPG of Doom that had like not technically canon, but had like all of his weapons itemized and described, and like blueprints that just some really devoted person had uploaded of like Castle Von Tomb from this other, text of, that's again kind of not canon. The fans were really helpful, even if they didn't know I was there.
That I think they're gonna love hearing that. Um, so now that you've written in the Marvel universe, how excited are you for the opportunity to possibly do it again?
I would love to do again, if for no other reason than working with these teams again, because like everybody from editorial to production to promotion was so fantastic. I got to go to Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago and meet everybody and talk to, and they're all so passionate and like so excited about these projects and these characters, and especially like for coming from the Marvel side, like the love for these characters is so clear. So I would do it for no other reason than to get to work with these folks again. But I'm just saying, now that Star Wars has announced like a romance line and everything, Marvel, the time is ripe. I'd love to write these characters again. I'd love to write Betsy Braddock and an unnamed mysterious character, and just get to play in this world again because it was so fun.
That's wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your time talking to me. And again, I love the book. I'm going to finish it now. Uh,
Yay!
and thank you and the
There'll be
best
like
of
an
luck to you.
appendix after this video to be like, reader. No.
I
Um,
no, if I have any follow-up questions, I'll be like, hey, but
fantastic.
again, spoiler free. So perfect.
Delivery. Well, thank you so much for reading and thank you for talking to me. And thank you to anybody who reads this book. I really, really loved making it and it was just the coolest opportunity. So I appreciate anybody who opens the book, honestly.
Thank you, Becca. You have a great day.